This is Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon here on Mitch Marathon Month. In fact, we probably should have said that all together, but July 2019 is coming to a close, and so will Mitch Marathon Month. We will do it again in July of 2020. I have been on the road quite a bit this month, and, well, in fact, I'm going to keep this talk up kind of short. I just want to... So I'm sort of fitting it in between two shows, quite frankly, like actual rock shows, so my time is limited. But on the phone, we have Janet Gardner and her husband, guitarist and producer Justin James. They have a new album out called Your Place in the Sun. I did this interview back in June. And, I'm going to tell you a couple of Vixen stories here. And by the way, I saw Vixen at M3 in May earlier this year without Janet, and they were terrific. They were absolutely terrific, and I've seen video of Janet performing, and she's terrific. So if you're a fan of the band or of the music, you sort of get a double dose. You get both band and Janet going out and doing their own thing, and so you get a double dose of good right there. So, hey... good stuff. But back in 2001, and I believe it was 2001, Stephen Pearcy, along with Vince Neil, Slaughter, and Vixen were, they were doing this Voices of Metal tour, and I had a chance to go out and see a couple of shows, and we were in Connecticut somewhere, I believe. Hartford, it might have been. And I was hanging out with Steven, and we were on his bus. And what I remember, there was this comedian here, Greg Gass. And he walks on the bus, and he's like, "Hey, I'm Greg Gass from the Howard Stern Show." This was around the time that Jackie the Joke Man Martling had left the Howard Stern Show, and they hadn't found a permanent replacement. But... anyway, Greg was there, and he was saying that he was from the Howard Stern Show, and he was doing these Gene Simmons imitations on the back of the bus, and it was quite funny. And of course, we went to see the show, and got to meet the Vixen ladies, and Slaughter, and Vince Neil, and everybody. Everything was great. And I'm trying to think who was in. Brent Fitz, who's now with Slash, might have been the drummer for Vince at the time, I think. Anyway, listen, it was 18 years ago. Anyway, but after the show, Steven comes back on the bus, and for whatever reason, the steps on the bus were wet. I don't know if somebody dropped a drink, or I don't remember it being raining or anything. Anyway, so Steven steps on this thing, and he slips, lands boom right on his side, and ends up cracking a couple of ribs. And I'm going to have to go back and check, but I think after that the tour was canceled, or Steven's appearances were canceled. But boy, I certainly remember seeing him fall and seeing the grimace on his face, and it was like, ugh. But anyway, good memories of being on the road. These days, I have been attending a lot of Def Leppard and Tesla shows, and so thank you to the boys in Tesla, and of course the guys in Def Leppard. The shows are spectacular. I mean, holy mackerel! And I know folks are like, oh, they're not really singing live. Yeah, they are actually. They are actually singing live. So when you go see a show and you walk out of there and go, it sounded great, that's because the band sounded great. They've been doing this for more than 30 years. They sort of know what they're doing. Anyway, if Def Leppard comes to town, you can go, rest assured that other than a couple of the drum loops and stuff that Phil Collin and Vivian and others have discussed here with me on the show, everything is live, and it is just spectacular. Spectacular. Great stuff. And congratulations, by the way, to my buddy Steve, who's teching for Tesla. That's great stuff. In fact, I'll tell you this. In Montreal, the band spent 3 days. They played here the Wednesday. They were here the Tuesday and the Thursday. And Frank Hannon, the guitarist, got to go over to Frank Marino of Mahogany Rush's house, right? Never met him before, and it was facilitated that he'd be invited over to Frank's house. Frank went to Frank's house. Try to follow the story. It's a lot of Franks here. And believe me, it was a confusing night because I went with my buddy Mitch to the show, and Frank had Frank. So it was Frank, Mitch. It was delightful. Anyway, and Frank hadn't got to go over to Frank Marino's house, and they got to play a little bit, jam a little bit, and talk horses and dogs and other stuff, not just music. So that was a really, really a good time. Anyway, let me get over here to Janet and her hubby. And by the way, that seems to be a trend. There seems to be these couples that do interviews together. I'm trying to think. Hailstorm. Anyway, the folks in Hailstorm, Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo. They do that. Anyway, it's interesting, and it offers an extra challenge to an interviewer because, for me, I try to get into a headspace and to an arc. You start here and you work your way to there, and then you have sort of all right, I want to land here, and you're going, and then, a second person chimes in, and not just husbands and wives, but sometimes you do with two band members, and it's like, I'm going here, I'm going here, I'm going here, and I almost got the person to go where I want, and then this other person throws me a curveball, and you're like, all right, let's keep going with the curveball now. Let's try to hit this one out of the park. And, I'm fine with doing double interviews, but I do prefer the one-on-one. If you have followed me for a while, I had a show called One-on-One, and I like that one-on-one vibe. But anyway, do not take this as a complaint, Justin or Janet. That is absolutely not how it's intended. I'm just telling you how my brain works. But here we go. Without further ado, and I've adooed for about 7 minutes, here is the one, the only, well, actually, there's two people. It's Janet Gardner and the other guy. No, that's not nice. And Justin James. We are speaking with Janet Gardner and Justin James together. They have a new album out called Your Place in the Sun, though I did notice that Janet has the bigger name on the cover, or the only name on the cover. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But no, it's great to speak to both of you.
You too, Mitch.
Yeah. So let me. Since we'll split it up. I'll start with Janet, and then we'll go to Justin. But Janet, talk to me about putting together this music, because of course you come from Vixen, which is a brand name, and I know folks hate when I say brand, but it's easily identifiable. When you put out an album, people know what to expect. Talk to me about sort of striking out on your own for the second time, but coming under the Janet name and getting an album put together for the fans.
Well, it started out obviously as a side project to Vixen, and it was kind of accidental. Justin and I we set up a studio in our house. We were both down there kind of working, and he was playing something I liked. I started singing, and we were off and running, and there was no turning back. So, we didn't plan it. It was nothing other than just two musicians sitting in a room together and doing what comes naturally.
So when you're crafting these songs, and you said together, is it really a collaboration in terms of lyrical content and musical content, or do you sort of hum a couple of bars and he comes in and says, hey, how does the songwriting process work? Or are these Janet songs and then Justin helps out, or are these Justin songs that Janet sort of sings over? What's sort of the creative process behind putting these together?
Well, it's absolutely 50-50. It's not, we're not really that departmentalized. I mean, we slightly are. Justin probably does a little bit more musically, and I probably do a little bit more lyrically, but we definitely do it all together. And it starts in totally different ways. Sometimes it starts with Justin with a little, with a piece of music. Sometimes it starts with me with a piece of music or a lyric idea. Between the two albums, they kind of differed in how they started. Justin had a lot more time during the making of this one, so he did a lot more of the initial inspiration for a lot of these. But it definitely goes back and forth, and I think overall it's kind of we both jump in on things, and neither of us goes very far without the other. without including the other person in to bring them in to whatever's happening at the moment, you know.
So,
because if you do that, then there's too much of it done and there's not enough to sort of collaborate on. So we try to bring each other in pretty quickly.
Right. Now, Justin, how does the process work for you? Is it as she's described, or do you have a sort of a different take on how Your Place in the Sun got put together?
No, it's exactly how she said it. She last summer was out on the road, obviously, with Vixen a lot. In the summertime, they had a crazy schedule. So I had a little bit more free time just to, sit back and noodle with, different ideas. But I mean, it definitely, usually it started out with, I'll come up with like a main riff, and then Jan will instantly jump in and come up with a really cool, chord progression to put some vocals over for the verse. And we've just developed this great partnership together. I mean, the first album was an experiment for us. We had never written together. But with this one, I think over time in the working together for the last couple of years, doing shows in the first one, we kind of got to know each other, and it just made things pretty easy, actually, going into it. We've kind of we've adapted to each other.
Yeah, the workflow on this album was really smooth and productive. We very rarely got stuck or, down about anything. It was just really, really a great workflow.
That's great. So I did mention brand. Talk to me about going back out there on the road, because as you just mentioned, you're on the road. And having to go do it under your name, is it more difficult? Do you find promoters are trying to play games and say, "Hey, Vixen's Janet"? How is it? Are you advertised, and is it difficult rebuilding a brand?
It is, because this is the first time in my life I've ever done anything outside of Vixen, so I never built my own name. So it is kind of an uphill battle. You say Janet Gardner, people go, "Who?" You say Vixen, they go, "Oh." And then you say, "Well, she's a singer from Vixen." And then they go, "Oh." So, yeah, it's hard to get people to know, who I am and what I've done in the past. But it doesn't really matter. I think most of the hardcore Vixen fans know what's happening. So they know exactly what's going on.
Right.
And it takes a while to sort of get to the second tier of people. But yeah, there are promoters who want to, include the former Vixen in the marketing materials. But that's fine. It's true. That's who I am. That's what I did. So I don't really mind it. There's a line, obviously, that they can't cross and use the logo and things like that. And we have to say, no, you can't do that.
But they are sneaky. I love promoters.
They want to sell tickets.
One of my friends is Stephen Piercy, and for years when he wasn't in Rat, they were always playing these games, and it drove everybody crazy. And I want to get off the Vixen thing in terms of leaving the band and stuff, but I do have to ask you, on January 16th, you post, you want to step aside and let Roxy and Cher pursue their vision for the future of Vixen. What is their vision, and how is it different than yours? Why was it not a shared vision? You
are the first person who has picked up on that. You are on it.
Thank you.
It mostly, of course, in that statement, I also mentioned, personal and time for family. And that is the biggest part of it, is that, I do have more family obligations and things like that than the other members. And it was very difficult sometimes. They would want to do stuff that I would say, well, I don't want to be gone from home that long. I don't want to be away from my family that long. And it's not fair to them either. So that's the main reason. But yes, we did have some differing opinions, some creative differences, typical things that bands go through. It's hard to get everybody on the same page at the same time. And I definitely felt that they would be less frustrated and better off without me there, and I would be less frustrated and better off pursuing my own vision.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, yeah. I do have the entire thing in front of me here from your Facebook page. I don't see anything about family. Let me see here. I see Soul Searching, Sleepless Nights. Yeah, well, all right. And so, okay, so your vision was, if I'm getting this right, less time on the road, more time with family, and it differs from their vision because they wanted to just sort of go for broke and get out there and work it as much as possible.
Well, absolutely, and that's their
right.
Prerogative to do that. And when we've been trying to make a new Vixen record forever. And that also was going to involve me being away, everybody wanting to get in the same room together. I was more in favor of, sending things back and forth. So I didn't have to leave my family for weeks at a time to sit in writing sessions because I can't do that right now. So there was a little difference on that too, how a new record was going to be made. Nobody's wrong. Nobody's bad. Nobody's doing anything, it's just different approaches.
Right. Well, and getting Vixen records done over the years seems to have been somewhat difficult. I mean, there's only 4, right? So
correct.
Should have been a bit more. But okay, let me get back.
Should have been a little bit bigger catalog.
Yeah, after what are we looking at here? 20, 30 years?
Yeah, it'll 30 years coming up. So yeah. I joined Vixen in 1983. So for me, it's a long time.
Well, one album a decade seems reasonable. No, but
I'm not satisfied with that.
Yeah, so let's get back to what you are satisfied with. Your Place in the Sun. I've of course been listening to the album, and this is going to sound bad, but I was surprised at how much of a kick-in-your-face rock album was. Usually when people go off solo, they go and become self-indulgent and do some kind of acoustic whatever. But this is a kick-ass rock album. Talk to me about the musical direction that you wanted to take and have taken on Your Place in the Sun.
It's funny you mentioned that because we recently got like a negative comment from somebody saying, she should be doing more mellow, acoustic, AOR, bluesy stuff.
Oh, stop it.
But that's not who I am. I mean, Justin and I are being ourselves. So what inspires us is what we go with. So what you see is what you get, pretty much. A couple of times we did sit down and go, oh, let's do an acoustic-y song. But for the most part, it's just kind of whatever comes out. And with the last album, I recorded that when I was still a part of Vixen. So I really had no intention of making it anything like Vixen, but we did have a couple people that were kind of disappointed that there wasn't a good representation of what I would do in Vixen. So fair enough. This time we did make an effort to do a couple more things that were maybe a little more melodic and reminiscent of what people would be used to hearing or want to hear from something new from me. So we did a little bit of that. But for the most part, we just kind of went with what came out, and a lot of it happened to be rockin'.
Yeah, as it should be. I mean, you can still rock in America, right? Night Ranger wrote it.
Oh, there's a song in that too.
Night Ranger wrote about that. Yeah,
it's been done.
It's been done. I want to go back a little bit in history. The last time I had a chance to interview Cher Ross, we talked about the Vixen album Tangerine, and it was not well received in terms of for her. So talk to me about that album just real quick. Jan wasn't there. You and Gina and Roxy put together this album. What was going on at the time where you said, hey, if they don't want to be involved, we're just going to go and make an album and that'll be it?
Well, that's exactly what was going on. We definitely reached out to both of them and, asked if they wanted to be part of it. They both declined for whatever the reason. So we just proceeded. I didn't know or have any idea that Cher was upset about that or that she didn't I knew she didn't want to be part of it, but I didn't think she was upset about it. She certainly didn't let on to us that she was.
A little bit upset.
Yeah. Yeah, we were writing a bunch of songs. We had about 50 songs, and we just wanted to put them out there. And they didn't seem to want to participate. So the three of us just released it.
In terms of releasing new music with as Janet Gardner, now that you're solo, the last album is 217. This one just came out at the end of May. What do you sort of see the plan moving forward? Is there sort of a 5-year plan where every year to 18 months to 2 years you want to have new music out? Or is it, well, I've said what I've had to say, now we'll go tour? How do you sort of see you moving forward, both of you, in fact, in the next sort of 5 to 10 years?
Well, we haven't really talked much about it, but I would definitely, I love the creative process. I love writing songs, recording songs, so that will definitely continue. There is no doubt about that. As far as touring goes, yeah, after every album, I think we'll go out and play the songs for people and bring it out live. So I don't see any big, long breaks of extended touring. I don't know about Justin, but we'll definitely, do a combination of both. But for me, I love writing songs. I love working with Justin. So I don't see us stopping.
No,
because it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the things, and I say this kind of often, is a lot of, we're married, obviously, and a lot of couples, on their weekends, they plan to go to dinner or to the movies or just a night out in the town and have fun. For us, we really get off on writing new music and doing that. And it's so cool that we can enjoy that together. And, with both albums, it was one of those things, it wasn't planned. It just kind of happened. And then we fell into the moment, and just every week we were punching out something new. And so I don't see any plan in the future to slow down. And like Janet said, we got this album out right now, so we're focusing on, hitting the road and doing some shows to support it. And then I'm sure we'll cycle back around to writing and recording again.
Talk to me a little bit about the dynamic of being a married couple, because, as Janet said before with Vixen, sometimes there's creative differences and sometimes you have to sort of move on from each other. How does the dynamic of being married change a band perspective or change a band dynamic? Are there moments where you just say, okay, she's my wife, she's right, she's always right, that's how it goes? You know what I mean? Or is it just, hey, no, music's first and we have to set aside that we're a married couple to focus the band on band stuff?
We've been pretty fortunate. We first, when we got together, I mean, we both, met, through music, and we had actually did something with the Sin City Sinners in Vegas before we even got married. So when we got married, we had kind of kicked around the idea of, working together, but we avoided it because we were afraid that it would cause tension between the two of us. And again, like she said, it just kind of happened as a fluke one day of just messing around with a riff idea. And then she started singing over it. And we realized that, we really enjoyed this together, that we actually do have a special chemistry there, outside of the marriage musically with each other. And yeah, I mean, marriage always comes first to us at the end of the day. But, so far we've been fortunate enough that it's never come between us, music or the marriage, against the other part. So it's been really cool.
That's great. I want to go back to, just real quick, Janet, to the beginning of the career with Vixen. It's, 1988, the first album comes out. What was the environment like for an all-female band? We had the Bon Jovis and the Def Leppards and Kiss doing Crazy Nights, and that look, the glam look. Was it easy sort of just to fit into that, or did the record company come to you and say, okay, you need to dress this way, you need to look this way, you need to sing this way? Was Vixen able to be Vixen, or was there a lot of pressure put onto you?
Well, the songs that we had going into that were a little less poppy. They were a little bit heavier. So, yeah, they did have an influence over the musical direction, I would say, more than the look. We just, the look thing was easy. We were girls. It was easy to look like girls. The guys who had to work harder to look like girls. So, yeah, they did. The songwriting, they wanted radio hits. It was big radio back then, of course. And they wanted us to get played. So that's where they intervened a lot, was in the song selection and getting outside writers and things like that. And no, we were not happy about it, but we did it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Richard Marx song certainly didn't hurt. And when I spoke to Richard last, he was very pleased that he wrote it, and he in fact performs it himself. Was that an offense to you that they brought in Richard to do a song, or now that you think back?
No, actually, that one wasn't, because we knew him.
Okay.
Okay. Obviously, we had the same manager. We were on the same label. We had met him. He got it. He understood us. And it was really easy to work with him because of that. So, no, that one wasn't. That was a really positive experience, I think, for everybody.
Working with Spencer Proffer. Proffer. Talk to me a little bit about that, because he's obviously been involved with a lot of the bands from that era. His name, if Spencer was involved, you knew that it was going to get done. What was he like working for you? Did he get you to that next level? Is there good memories of working with Spencer?
Spencer was easy, actually, to be honest. He was a lot less particular about things than the other producers that we worked with. He was pretty easy to work with and pretty fun. He made it fun. I remember being sick for part of it, and then he was kind of a drill sergeant. I was kind of like, I'd probably do these a lot better, if we waited a week until I got well. But, he was like, no, you sound great. Keep going. Keep singing. So, yeah, he was easy. He was fun. And we had worked with Duane Barron before. Jan and I had on an earlier project with an earlier incarnation of Vixen. And he was a great engineer. So we knew that going in. We didn't know Spencer, but we knew Duane.
Great.
So there was a comfort level there.
Yeah. Duane's great. Great. Just quickly, sorry, I've had an incredibly long day.
I understand.
Yeah, it's not every day you walk by a burning car on the road. But no, just real quick, is this sort of the duo moving forward in terms of making music and touring? Or, Justin, do you go off and do a solo album and go do some other bands? And Janet, do you do a truly solo album at some point? Or is it a team and it'll stay a team for as long as you can see?
For me, it's definitely a team. I love a lot of the bands that I've, played with, the musicians that I've played with in the past, but I have never had this connection that I have with Janet, and I have no desire whatsoever to do anything other than this.
Me neither. We're both very satisfied with our writing process. It's very satisfying to both of us. So I don't have any longing to do anything else at this point. And Justin doesn't seem to either. So for the foreseeable future, we're together like glue.
Oh, that's great. And just real quick, since we mentioned Jan a few times, we all know that she obviously passed away a few years ago. Just, if you can, just give me a couple of memories of Jan and what did she mean to you both professionally and personally? Well,
I go back with Jan to memories of riding in a station wagon pulling a U-Haul behind us. We toured a lot before we got signed and before even Cher or Roxy joined the band. So I have a lot of really funny memories of, the U-Haul trailer falling off the back and running into the ditch and trying to get out of it, and all of us sleeping in one hotel room together and stealing towels off the maid cart. And I have a lot of those kind of memories, and those were so fun. It was so carefree, and there was no record company. There was no pressure of any kind. We were just a band having fun on the road. And she was always very quiet, but fun at the same time. She was very funny. From a personal level, super easy to be around. She's one of those people that never gets on your nerves, ever. Everybody else did. We all got on each other's nerves, of course, because, you know, everybody has obnoxious things that they do. She had none of those. None. So easy to be around in all situations, all circumstances. So those are my most fond memories of her. You know, later, of course, when we were playing bigger shows and you know, we broke off in different writing teams and things change, and it always gets weird. But she was always the same, really down to earth Minnesota girl, just salt of the earth. Great person.
She definitely was fantastic. And since you mentioned some of the big shows, and we'll finish with this, you did have over the years have a chance to open for Bon Jovi and Kiss and the Scorpions and Ozzy, Deep Purple, which is sort of a interesting combination there. What was sort of your favorite tour to be a part of, and which is the one sort of headliner that made you feel right at home?
Justin is pointing a finger at me saying, you better say Kiss, because he's a huge Kiss fan.
Me too.
Sorry, honey. The funny one that you said it was kind of an interesting combination was definitely Deep Purple. For me, they are so legendary and so amazing as individuals and as a band that I enjoyed that one so much. Getting to know them, you know, as people and watching them lay it down every night. The masters at work. I would pick and it was one of the few tours where I stayed almost every night to watch them. And I would go stand behind Ian Pace for a while and watch him just killing it on the drums. I'd go stand behind John Lord, and, you know, I'd be like 4 feet away from them watching these legendary guys just make the magic. Ian Gillan wasn't there, which was unfortunate, but Joe Lynn Turner, oh my God, the guy's voice just doesn't stop. He is amazing. So, yeah, and Richie Blackmore, you know, interesting character, really amazing musician. That was definitely one that I will, you know, if I die tomorrow, I know that I've experienced something really amazing.
The correct answer was Kiss, by the way.
They were great too, but we didn't do a long tour with them. We filled them for Slaughter. They had a European little thing they had to go do, so it was us, Winger, and Kiss, and we only did about a week. So that was 89. I didn't get to know them.
That must have been 1989. What? That must have been the Hot in the Shade tour in 1989 then.
It's exactly what it was.
Yes.
One of the coolest stage shows ever.
Yeah. Justin's going Kiss crazy. He's a Kiss fanboy over there. Calm down.
As he should be. I'm just curious though, by the way, how did the Deep Purple tour come around? Because when I see you being thrown out there with Bon Jovi, you go, okay, you know, both have an MTV look, and Ozzy and Scorpions were doing sort of the glammier part of their career. But Deep Purple seems sort of like, well, is it a manager that you had in common? Was it were you friends? Were band members dating each other? How did that tour come together?
No, I don't. Honestly, I have no idea. We had a great agent for one thing. And I think I heard something once about Richie Blackmore actually having something to do with it. You know, I'm sure we were thrown in with a bunch of bands of like, well, here are our possible openers for this tour. And I think he actually said something like, yeah, I like them. Let's take them.
Oh.
I don't know if it's true. That's just what I
that'll be the headline on all the rock sites. Richie Blackmore chose Vixen.
Richie Blackmore chooses Vixen.
So let's just go with that because that works. That is a much better headline than anything else. And Justin, Bruce Kulick or Ace Frehley?
Bruce Kulick, to be honest. I'm going to get flamed for that, but I love the 80s Kiss stuff. I love the 70s too, but Revenge and Hot in the Shade and Crazy Nights were in Asylum were awesome albums to me.
Asylum is definitely overlooked. Vinnie Vincent, did he save Kiss?
Yes. Lick It Up is one of my favorite Kiss albums, A Million to One, an overlooked song that I think is just unbelievably great.
That song is absolutely brilliant. Paul Stanley did on his solo tour. When was that? 2007 or something? Anyway, whenever he did it,
yeah.
That song is overlooked. Steve Brown, by the way, of Trickster, does an acoustic cover of it that is, and I know it's not a very rock word, but it's delightful. You got to check that out.
Definitely, yeah. I remember on the solo tour, I went to the show that he actually released the DVD on the House of Blues in Chicago. And I remember when he busted out into A Million to One, I about lost it. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool.
Yes, it was. Janet, Justin, a great pleasure. Of course, everybody should go out and check out the new album, Your Place in the Sun. It is, it's rocking, for the lack of a better word. Thank you for today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. And I hope the snake didn't bite you, and I hope you didn't catch on fire.
No, and what fans that might not understand the reference. I was walking the dog before we did this interview, and I was going through some tall grass, and a snake came out of the tall grass over the top of my right foot and then to the other tall grass, and I was just like, oh, sure, why not? And as I was coming back over the overpass, over the highway, there was a car on fire, and it was stuff where it was popping, and it was just like, oh, maybe I should not walk anymore. This is too much effort. Anyway, no, it was great. And then of course I ran back in. I'm like, oh, look at the time. I got to get on the phone, but I am here. I am winded, and I enjoyed it. And the album is great. So folks, do check it out. And if they come to a town near you, do check that out as well. And thank you for today. And I'm going to go catch my breath.
All right. Thanks so much, Nick. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, as we say in Montreal, merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you too, Mitch.
Cheers.
Take care.
You're listening to Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Rock Talk.